Christian Parenting.
Welcome to the Living Wholehearted podcast. We are Jeff and Tara Matson, a husband and wife team who is shrinking the integrity gap in our own lives and helping others do the same. I'm a leadership and organizational development coach, and Tara is a licensed marriage and family therapist.
We believe that if you have a following, you are a leader, and how you lead matters. Whether you are leading in the home, work, or community, we are bringing you biblical, clinical, and relational wisdom to help you in every relationship that matters most to you. None of us do this perfectly, but we are leaning into the reality of our humanity and profound wisdom of grace. I am just so excited because we have a really beautiful woman with us today who's going to share just her journey as a counselor, as a mentor to many leaders. I just get the privilege of being able to hear so many different stories and the way that God uses all of who we are to draw him to himself. And I just really wanted you to hear this woman's story and the wisdom that God has given her through her journey. Her name is Asti Eckley. She's from the greater community here in Portland, Oregon. And I'm just going to let her tell you a little bit about her stage of life and the things that she's into these days. Asti, welcome.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. So tell us all about your life right here, right now. What's going on in your world?
Yeah, my husband Justin and we have 4 little girls. We have a 9-year-old and twin 7-year-olds and a little one that's 4. She's still my baby. And we just finished actually renovating / I wouldn't call it a renovation. It was more like a rebuild of a home that is the only home we've ever owned. And we just loved it and the property. And so we spent the last 16 months living in an apartment building, which I pretty much knew everybody by the end of that in the building. And yeah, we just moved home. We actually, COVID hit and we were buying sinks, and it was like, oh my gosh, do we keep buying sinks? And it's like, well, we got to get it done. So yeah, so that's where we're at. We moved home and we are attempting to have Justin work from home and the girls do school from home. And I'm just kind of keeping everyone fed. That's what it feels like.
Which is a big job these days.
Yeah.
4 girls. I can hear someone out in the audience being like, wow. Yeah. What's that like, mothering 4 little girls?
Oh, it's so good. As you guys will obviously hear in a bit, just some of my story, but I never imagined I would be a wife, and definitely not a mom, and definitely not a mom to 4 just beautiful little girls. I mean, it's a huge privilege. And yeah, I'm just learning as I go. We're getting into new ages that are more fun because like my 9-year-old, we're starting to have that real like friendship. Does that, that you have girls older than me.
Yeah.
But still a little, 4-year-old that I just smooch all day. So it's just very fun. We're in like a very fun ages.
I love it. Asti, the bits I've gotten to know about you, I just sense that you are an incredible encourager and a lover, like a good, you just love well.
Thank you.
And we met because of girls, right? You were reading Courageous, being Daughters Rooted in Grace, and just trying to shepherd your little girls. So this is so fun getting to talk with another kindred spirit, a mommy of girls. So tell us a little bit more about your spiritual journey and how you got to the place that you're at today.
Yeah. So my story is, I had a mom and dad who loved and still loves us kids a lot. And honestly, they just kind of did the best that they knew how to do. My mom has a really, really, really hard story. Like I can't even talk about her story without crying. It's just really hard. And so the fact that she was even able to come out of that and mother to me is a miracle. And my dad too, he's got a pretty hard story. And so we were just kids, happy kids growing up, and my parents worked really, really hard. My mom always talked about Jesus, but I wouldn't say we kind of did what we want. And I always try to speak very respectfully just for my parents, because I love them and I want to honor them in all that I say. But at a very young age, I was put into a daycare center, and at this daycare facility, the husband of the woman who ran it, she would put us down for naps, and then she would go run errands, and he would sexually abuse us kids. And my mom did put me through therapy, which I do believe helped, but I do have memories. I have memories of trying to crawl under, the coffee table, because I thought if I could get under there, he couldn't get to me. And, now with little girls, it makes your stomach sick, to think of one of my little girls trying to escape somebody like that. So fast forward, I was put into therapy. And then when I got into high school, I had began, I think what happens when you have trauma as a child, and you can correct me because you're the therapist, but I think that it's almost like something happens in your brain. And so for me, for a lot of years, I wondered why this happened again, because in high school, there was somebody who was supposed to be leading kids in the high school into the Marine Corps. He was actually taking vulnerable girls down to his office in the mall and sexually abusing them. And, for years after this happened to me, I remember thinking like, why did that happen again? Was that my fault? Why did I allow that to happen? And I was very confused by that. But as I got older, I realized that wasn't my fault. And I was vulnerable, and I was, this man knew that. And so that happened again in high school. And at this point, my mind and my brain was completely skewed as to what healthy sexuality was, what, even I had never even had anyone tell me, you can wait till your marriage. Like nobody had ever explained that to me. And so for me, all I knew was I had trauma. I was introduced to sex at a very, very inappropriate young age. And all my friends were drinking and partying and having sex. So I guess that's what I'm going to do. And so that just took me down that path. I was drinking, doing drugs, sleeping with both, men, women. It didn't really matter. I would do anything pretty much to just numb that pain inside and that feeling inside. And I did a pretty good job of, kind of keeping most of this from my parents. I would go and leave for a couple of days and then come home. I would do whatever I wanted. And so that next took me, I moved when I graduated high school, which I graduated by the skin of my teeth. I moved over to Bend because I didn't really have a plan. And a girlfriend of mine was like, well, I'm moving to Bend. And I was like, okay, well, sounds good. I'll come with you. And Bend is what really introduced me to a lifestyle that would have killed me had I not met Jesus. But I was with a boyfriend who introduced me to cocaine, and his roommate introduced me to crank. I mean, if you know what that is, it's disgusting. And so I was pretty much high on either cocaine at night and alcohol, and then I would numb the day out with like a Vicodin or a Xanax or whatever I could get my hands on. And so for about 5 to 6 days a week, that's how my life was for about that whole year I lived in Bend. Well, then I moved to Portland, and it's crazy to think it could have gotten even crazier than that. So when I got to Portland, I felt like I was my own woman. I could do whatever I wanted. And the interesting thing is I had a really cool job. Somehow I was maintaining this lifestyle with a pretty cool job. I worked at the Mac counter at downtown Nordstrom's. I loved my job. So even though I was living this crazy, lifestyle, I somehow made it to work. And I think it's because I knew that is what allowed me to be doing what I was doing. So I maintained that for about 2 years. And we're talking just absolute depravity. There are nights that I look back that, there was one in particular, New Year's Eve, that I did so many different types of drugs that I don't even know. I do know it was only by God's grace that I survived. I remember laying in bed that night and my heart was beating it felt like it was coming out of my chest, and I just prayed. And that's what's interesting is I hadn't given my life to Christ yet, but I remembered my mom talking about, Jesus. And I remember laying there praying and saying, God, if I don't die, I won't ever do this again. Making, full promises to God. And I was out again the next probably the next night. So that was pretty much my lifestyle. I had relationships, like I said, with both men and women. I really just wanted to be loved. I mean, looking back now, as an adult and working through years of my trauma and with the Lord, I look back and I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted somebody to see me. And so I ended up living with a boyfriend. I thought it was like the one. I remember actually thinking like, my life's getting together now. I laugh because it was not together. It was still just a mess. And we would now just, drink and do drugs together. And that became even a little bit abusive. And about this same time, I had a total Oprah story, long lost sister that was through my biological dad, because my dad that raised me adopted me when I was 3. And my biological dad had another daughter named Selena. And growing up, I kind of knew who Selena was, but like our parents, we never had a relationship. So I knew I had a half sister. And so about this time of living with this boyfriend in Portland, my mom had connected with me that, your sister Selena is actually living up there. And I had experienced a pretty traumatic situation, a death of a friend. And through that, I decided maybe it's time I reach out to this sister that I barely know. And so I reach out and we go to breakfast, and I'll never forget the breakfast. I was extremely hungover, and she had organized us to meet at this Garbanzo's. Did you ever eat at Garbanzo's?
No,
Okay.
I haven't.
It's like so good, but I'm, probably still drunk. And we meet at this place. It's like it's like hummus, right? Like hummus bowls. And I'm super just nervous. I'm meeting this long lost sister. I'm sitting across the table from her, and she's got this like adorably sweet husband. I'm like in combat boots, mohawk. Like I'm like looking at her like, we couldn't have met for cheeseburgers this morning, like garbanzos. Oh my gosh, it's horrible. And that's like the funniest memory to me. But so fast forward, I basically end up moving in with her and her husband. And there was just something different about them. I didn't know what it was, but I wanted it. And Nate, who I truly believe Nate is who led me to the Lord because of his love for his wife. And my dad was good to my mom. I don't want to ever diss them, but it was just something I'd never seen. There was no yelling, and he was considerate, and he asked her opinion, and he would, and the way she was with him was just, it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, and I'd never seen it before, and I definitely had never experienced it myself. And so they, the coolest part is they didn't push their faith on me. They just loved me. They met me right where I was at, and they took me in. And I don't know very many people that would take me at that time into their home. And so they basically showed up the way Jesus shows up, and they brought me in, and I was loved. And that was the first glimpse of that love that I was searching for. And so when they invited me to church, my joke was that if I could get a man like Nate, I would go to church. And then I did. I married their best friend, which ended up just being so awesome. But yeah, when they invited me, I went, and it was at Athey Creek, and it was the first time I had ever heard somebody talk about Jesus in this way. And when Brett just said, he will forgive you, and he will love you, and I remember he said, your sins will be washed away. And I was like, oh man. And so, I don't know if you're familiar with Brett, but he does a lot of times he'll give a time to respond, and he did. And I just sat there with tears streaming down my face, and it still makes me, emotional, and just looked up and I said, I want that, because I was done. I was so done. And that day changed my life forever. And so, met my husband a month later, and now 14 years, we've been married 12 and together 14. So,
Wow, Asti, thank you for sharing that such hard story. There's several things that I heard there that are, I think, true to most people's story that has any sort of trauma. But you said you just wanted to be loved, and you were looking for love in all the wrong places, which and you didn't know any different. I think that's such a story for so many that we look back and we go, well, I just didn't know. And God's fingerprints were, the step by step of you kind of just moving towards the promptings of reaching out to your, long lost sister. And you're like, I'm watching the way that your brother-in-law, I don't know, what do we call him?
He is my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He is
the way he was.
favorite.
Yeah, the way he's loving his wife, and you didn't know what to call that, but we call that love,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And it's just the
Amen.
transformation of the Lord in our life. And, it's so common as well, just that addiction is so deeply connected to trauma and the numbing out. You use the word numb a lot throughout your story. And that is something that we're all doing in different ways when we have so much pain and layers and layers. And oftentimes, again, your parents loved you deeply.
Yes.
And they did the best they could, but they were also responding to their trauma.
Yes.
And so you see that happening generation to generation. And so it's really more common than not that we would have these layers of compounded trauma. So you've got a lot of there, and you really are a story of amazing grace. So let's talk about post Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, you give your life right there.
Yeah.
And you meet your husband,
Yes.
and you guys get married, and now you're parenting these daughters. Talk about how the things you've learned in your story and how it shapes who you are today, and how God is using you in His greater purposes.
Yes. Oh man, I could go in so many different directions, but I think, I am passionate about a lot of things. I'm one of those people who I'm all or nothing. I'm all in. So, I mean, even with my faith, that was it. There was no, yes, I have natural doubt sometimes, but there was never a day after meeting Jesus that I was like, I don't know. I mean, I was all in, and I'll be all in till the day I meet him in person, And so for me, I think that's been something I've had to really pray through, because I have so many ideas and so many things I'm passionate about, and they change all the time. I'm a classic 3 on the Enneagram. I'm ready to go. And so the interesting thing was, I remember telling Justin, like, first of all, I believe I told him I don't even want kids, which is just crazy to think now. And he was like, okay, we'll get through that. We obviously have babies. He was probably like, oh my goodness. And then I remember saying, I definitely don't want to stay home. Like, I love my job. I was still doing makeup at that point. I owned my own business doing it. And I really believe, like, one of the things the Lord has shown me is that the Lord really does change the desires of our heart for our good. And I know I can say that with full confidence, because as I look back at my life, like, the desires of my heart have truly changed. And the more we walk with him, the less we think of ourselves and are so inward focused. And so that's been really cool. So a couple things with that is just the change he's made in my heart to want to be with my girls, and that is first, and then whatever else God has, I'm open to outside of that. And then another cool thing is I am sober. I'm completely sober, and I know that's not everyone's story, but for me, that's the safest route that I've chosen to take. And I just had actually 6 years, because I got sober completely when I got saved and never did drugs again. But I drank, and because I just thought that was fine. Well, 6 years ago, I made the decision. That's a whole nother podcast to get completely sober. And so with that, the cool thing is I've been able to step into Shepherd's Door, which is a women's recovery house here in Portland. And that's something that I'm very passionate about, is being able to be involved in that ministry. But it's just been really cool to have my heart want to be with my girls, and be okay with the little bit of extra time I have, being able to use that for ministry and for the things that he has planned for me. So
So good. I hear this like thread throughout, even when you started with the fact that you guys are remodeling, and or fixer up or type thing. I think that's what God does with our lives. Like, we look at things and just go, I don't know how this could be turned around. And slow and steady, he just starts to shift things and makes beauty out of ashes. And so I'm hearing so much of that in your story, Asti, as you surrendered your life to the Lord, and even that slow and steady drip. So even just 6 years ago, making another step into being completely sober. And that would make sense to me, knowing more of your story, why that would be a big decision for you.
Yes.
And then, helping others,
Mm.
like the women at Shepherd's Door. I think what's interesting about high capacity leaders, we talk about this more in our Shrinking the Integrity Gap book, but high capacity leaders, those that are able to go to the trenches
Oh,
and the
I
hard
love it.
places of life,
Oh,
often
yeah.
have trauma. And so you're just a
Yeah.
living example of that, and that things don't scare you, huh?
No,
You've been there, done
no,
that.
yeah. And I would say if you asked me outside of my family and my husband, um, yeah, what I am most passionate about, it is about people. It's the me. It's the me that was, you know, literally dead, and so even with when we remodeled, when we were in our apartment building, um, our family, Justin was working on the house a lot. So a lot of times it was me and the kids, but he would try to be there as much as he could. But we got to know 4 other incredible families in there, and actually a couple more, but there was a group of 4 of us. And I'm not kidding. There was some of them, there were days I would go in because I was just tearing up, because these were people who were like, they literally would be like, we've lived in apartment buildings before. It's not like this. It's normally terrible. So COVID hit, and we decided, since all of the spouses that didn't work with any of the public, we would stay outside and try to do the 6 feet thing. But we began having meals together outside, and people would bring out, one person would say they had, chips, and one person had this, and one person had this. And over the course of about 6 months, we were talking about Jesus. There were people who were like, I would never have even entertained this conversation without having this feeling of safety. And the ministry that we saw happen in that building, I want to write a book one day about it. I mean, it was profound to walk alongside. And, here was this crazy thing happening all over the world. And yet Justin and I prayed, and we were like, this is our mission field. There are people who risk their lives to go to other countries, and yet we have a mission field right here. And now I actually, 3 of the women, 2 moms, and another friend that lives there who's not a mama, but she's engaged there. And we're meeting at our new home twice a month for a women's Bible study. And that has just been like crazy. It's been just absolutely crazy. I mean, so cool. I never thought in a million years that the Lord would allow me or trust me that much. And yeah, it's just been, I don't even really have the right words to explain it. But so yes, that is my heart, is people, Shepherd's Door, the women, just because I think that's what we're lacking.
Well, and that's how he met you. It's how he met me in our stories, it was through people.
Yeah.
And it was people willing to risk and to dive in right where we're at.
Yeah.
I loved how you said, they wouldn't really want to hear about Jesus without feeling and experiencing the safety of those relationships. And I think that is so important. And it's actually a key part of understanding trauma, that the brain, going back to what you were saying earlier, I'll give my little neuroscience lesson
love
here.
it.
It's a good point. But it's the idea that the brain with trauma tricks us to say, now you're going to be on hyper alert because the world is unsafe. And so the rest of our life, until we really find healing, and healing comes through an experience of safety, which is what Christ brings and healthy relationships bring, which is an experience of safety. We need to have something new that helps our brain to catch up to a new reality. Otherwise, that trauma will just continue to be on replay that says the world's unsafe, be on alert, be on alert. And it's not that we have a sign on our head that says, come, hurt me again, but our trust meter gets broken in trauma. And so we have to have safe relationships to teach us how to trust again. And so that is such a vital part of what you're sharing holistically here.
I love that.
You've had people invest in you, Aussie, and provide safe relationships through those, through the lens of Christ and His Holy Spirit. And then now you're doing that in other people's lives. So
and they're doing it in ours. It's interesting when we step into like a serving role, we automatically think. I remember the first time I ever served high school girls, I thought, oh, I'm going to come help them. And what you realize is, no, this is a 2-way street here, and God actually uses both sides. And so, like, my women at the apartment, I call my women at the apartment because they all live there. They are like profound special to me. And I have learned and grown so much from their perspective. And I just love them. I almost feel like a mother hen. I'm like protective and a little crazy over them, you know? And so I love that two-way street. So yeah.
I love it. I love your mother hen, and you don't necessarily have an official title. You are just loving people wherever God brings them. And let's talk about the little people in your home that you're assigned to right now. Those 4 little girls. There are a lot of women out there that have so much passion in them, and they're antsy to get out and do big things for
Mm,
God in their mind. But they are doing big things right there in their
yeah.
home too. And it's a season, right? Us moms have to
Yes.
remember it's only a season. It feels longer sometimes than a season, but
Mm,
talk about the things that you're learning about this during this pandemic right now and being home
yeah.
with your girls, and what is God teaching you there?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I never thought I would have that desire. And man, I love just being with them. And my girls we're all pretty creative. Like we love to create together. And I would say too, just my mothering and who I am, I'm pretty open with my girls, obviously to the safety of their hearts and minds and what they're mature enough to hear or understand. But we talk a lot. We don't do a ton of devices, and I don't want that to, offend or shame anyone else. Like every home is different. But my girls are really into creating. So in this time of COVID, with the new house, we didn't quite finish the basement, but I was really like, we got to get a space where we can be together and we can make stuff together. And so that's kind of what it's been. We did a quick little, fun in the basement. We made like a little creative space and didn't even spend very much money, used a lot of reused stuff and did some thrifting. And so that's been really fun, just being able to like be with them together and doing these different things. And I feel like I'm cooking a lot of food though. Oh my goodness. I did not realize how much little girls and a dad home 24/7, right? Because usually they were at school. Justin comes out, he's like, "Can you make me some lunch?" I'm like, I'm like smiling, like the wife smile. And inside I'm like, "I don't want to make you any lunch. You want to make me lunch." And meanwhile, he's, working his butt off for us. But so I make the sandwich. But yeah, that's kind of where we're in, and we're trying to be thankful, right? Like that was something when COVID hit that was really hard for me. I actually, just the way I was raised and how, we were very thankful for the things we had. My dad worked so hard for every penny. And so I really struggled when COVID hit and people were losing their jobs and people were, were literally getting food stamps to put food on their table. And I struggled that we were finishing this house. It really was hard for me. And yet we were in this hard spot because it was like, we had to finish it. We had to get back into it. And so that's something I really try to be super vocal with my girls about, just being super thankful for the things they have and not trying not to complain. Right. And being content. And I also love teaching them how to thrift. I love teaching them how to save their money. And hopefully that will result in them being generous too. So yeah, we're kind of just, I don't know, we're figuring it out as we go, but we want our home to be fun. And that was part of the heart behind redoing the house. Is Justin and I, we remember hearing Jenny Allen when she was first, like even before If Gathering, she said that her and her husband prayed and said, "We want big things, Lord, and we are the people that are ready for it. We can do it." And when I heard that and I told Justin about it, we were like, yeah, we're all in, let's go. And so we prayed that same prayer. And that was part of the remodel, was like, "Lord, if you allow us to do this, this will be, we want this home to be a place of refuge, and not just for our family, but for those little girls like me who didn't, would have loved to have gone to a house like that." And so that's what we're hoping too, is that this will be a place that the girls' friends can come, and that's safety, that safe place where they'll be loved and cared for and fed.
Refuge.
Lots of food. We love
And
food.
fed.
Yes.
Lots of food.
Food for food. So
I
that's why
believe
I'm
it's gonna
hoping
happen.
Courageous Girls. I'm praying right now. I texted out a couple people. I mean, I want to get a Courageous Girls group. Like that's something on my radar. And yeah, we have this house. We want to use it,
Yes, you're going to. And
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the baby step in it. And I think everything is just so slow right now, right?
I know.
So our timelines are so different than God's, but it's been just so encouraging to hear the unfolding and the remodeling of your life. God is so good. And I always look at all the disciples and all the people he calls, and he calls a wide variety. And so there's nobody left out. I mean, if you go through from Old Testament to New Testament, but it really is kind of interesting how he plucks us out. And I think the word for the audience maybe you feel like you don't belong because your story. And I'm praying that your Osti's story will just remind you, like, there is no story. None of us have a perfect story that God says, oh, that one right there. In fact, all of us have some sort of a brokenness. And so, Osti, because you know your pain and you worked through your pain, you are loving in deep, deep ways. So I'd love for you to just leave our listeners with maybe a word of encouragement, something that's on your heart that you just feel like God wants to speak right here now for such a time as this.
Just one.
You go for it, girl.
Oh, man. Yeah. I would just say that right now the world needs to be loved so much. When we look around and we look online and we see the comments online, and we see what's, there's so much fear happening right now, and people are afraid, and they're lonely. And honestly, when we moved into that apartment building, it just rocked our world with how close ministry was. And I feel like as I look around right now, I see a lot of amazing things happening, but I also see this unraveling of church leaders or people feeling afraid, and they can't wait till Sunday morning starts again. And they're so focused on that. And yet right around us all, there are people who are desperate for what they just need to be introduced to, which is Jesus. And I would just encourage people, because it's my heart. And I'm the crazy lady in the grocery store that will talk to you. Like, you better turn the other way. Because I love people. And sometimes it just takes that one conversation. And I'm not saying to be pushy, because that doesn't go over well with anyone, but just love the people around you, the little babies in your home, your husband. I mean, how often does our husbands get pushed to the side because we're tired and we're stressed and we're so busy with the kids? And yet those husbands, man, all they need is just a little squeeze and a little kiss and a little, you're a sexy babe. You know what I'm saying? So I just would say, just to love, you know what I'm saying? I love my man. Since that day one. But yeah, just love the people that are around you. And I believe that more ministry is happening right now through that than any massive Sunday morning gathering could happen. So, just people are right around you. Just look. Mm-hmm.
So good. Just a reminder, like church history, it's very rare that Christians came together in such large gatherings. It was always in the home or, again, in secrecy because of persecution. So we really got used to, in the Western culture, being, in big gatherings. And so this is actually a little more similar to what the church over history, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I love that word. It's such a good reminder.
Let's do this.
Yeah, let's do this. I love it. Mm-hmm. Well, Osti, you're such a beautiful story, and you tell and you encourage and you lift up anybody you can. How can people find you if they're interested in following you or learning more about what you're up to?
Yeah, I have an Instagram. Obviously, everyone loves Instagram. It's just Osti Eckley, and I'm sure you'll put it in your notes. I do have a website. I'm laughing because right now I'm in that, Lord, what's my outside the home purpose? So I have a website. There's not really much on there, but you can find me and email me through there. And again, that's just ostieckley.com. So but always Instagram and email. That's, kind of the easiest way.
Yeah. And I bet you if someone emailed you, you'd respond. Just knowing who you are.
Oh, goodness. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being so vulnerable and so real. It's super refreshing for me. And I'd love, if you hang around a little longer, I'm going to say a few things about trauma as we close up today. But Osti, thank you so much for all that you've given to our audience. And I'm just grateful for your story. Just really, it is a beautiful story of grace. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Asti was just so real and so vulnerable with her story. And I know it's leaving several of you just feeling maybe a bit overwhelmed, maybe sad, wondering how you prevent such a story in your own children's lives. Maybe you're feeling some triggers and recognizing things that she shared that are in your own story. I just want to be able to offer a few maybe pieces to how to understand healing from trauma and just kind of bring some closure to what Asti shared. She mentioned something that was really important to say, that in her healing journey, she recognized that she was not at fault for her abuse. There's this lie that's embedded in abuse that everything is happening to me because of me. That is because often abusers will use that lie and twist. They'll say things like, I hit you because you made me mad, or I sexually offended you because of what you wore. There's so many ways that gets twisted, and that's from the enemy, the enemy of our souls, and he's using abuse to kill, steal, and destroy. So that is a lie that says it's my fault that this happened to me. And part of the healing journey and what Jesus and those of us helping along the way of trauma recovery is to get to that place where you recognize it is not my fault. The abuse has caused a lot of damage, and out of that damage, I might be participating in unhealthy coping strategies. Those are the things that we start to own. But the abuse itself, especially when it comes to minors and children, there is so much that we could have unpacked in Asti's story, but I appreciated the level of sensitivity of what she did share and what she didn't share. One of the things that I get often asked is from parents of how do I protect my children, from the daycare provider who could possibly harm my kid, or from the uncle or there are predators and harmful people trying to get at vulnerable populations everywhere. There is no particular part of the world. There is no particular creed, race, ethnicity, anything that is exempt from having abuse in a system. So it's a good question. And honestly, there's just a few things that we can do, but know that because it's not our fault and that any of us could be vulnerable to somebody causing harm. But what we can do is give our children a voice, help equip them with the ability to discern their own comfort levels, not force them to do things they don't want to do. There is this small little window continuum where sometimes we'll make our children's hug Uncle Joe because it's the right thing to do. We just hug in our family rather than honoring their discomfort of feeling physically close to somebody they don't really know, a stranger, even though he's Uncle Joe, I don't really know him. Things like that we've got to think through. I've unpacked this a little bit more in chapter 8 of Courageous. And in our book, Shrinking the Integrity Gap, we talk quite a bit about the power dynamics and how to be a healthy, wholehearted leader that's safe. And if you've been in any sort of abuse in your own story, how to not recreate that in others, as well as how to recover from your own trauma. That's kind of the other key piece as parents who are shepherding, or as leaders who are shepherding who have had abuse in your own story. Something happens in that our trust meter breaks. I talked about that a little bit earlier. And so in order for us to be able to really discern who are safe people and who are unsafe people, we talk about it in red light, green light, yellow light. So in both books, we unpack that there are red light people in the world who have proven by their behaviors or their lack of being willing to be safe, inconsistency, that turn into red light people. Those are people that we need to be able to have high boundaries with. Yellow light people are the confusing people, and oftentimes we let into our world, and maybe they don't mean to harm us, but they harm us just because they're human. And green light people are the safe people. So we unpack that a little bit more. We do that in Courageous Girls. If this is something that you're wanting to grow in, you can definitely go to mycourageousgirls.com and take your daughter through the curriculum. You can go read the book, Courageous. You can also read our latest book, Shrinking the Integrity Gap, if you're a leader, and particularly if you're a leader within the church. You need to be trauma informed because so many people have been abused at some level, some spectrum, and it is vital that we understand what trauma is about and how it impacts us. It helps us to love people well and to love them more like Jesus right where they're at. always think of the woman at the well. She had a lot of trauma in her story, and she was ostracized because she couldn't trust and lean into anybody, but it was Jesus who met her where she was at and met her in a way that she could understand. And so recognize your own trauma, but if you do your own work, it helps you be able to go deeper, like Asti. It's so fun to hear. So if you're interested in some books, I would recommend Mending the Soul, The Body Keeps Score. There's several more that we reference in both our books. You can visit us at livingwholehearted.com if you need a counseling resource to help you in your journey. And we could also resource you in your own community if needed, or reach out to your church for some resources. So I am so grateful that you joined us, and I just needed to make sure that it came back on and just helped us unpack a little bit more about abuse. We're going to continue having various interviews and addressing this issue, but for today, thank you. And I pray that you would be encouraged to know that God loves us right where we are. He's wooing us, and that He is taking all of who we are and remodeling us into a beauty out of ashes, right? It's such a great story, and I appreciate Asti and her real vulnerability with us today. All right, take care this week, and we look forward to connecting with you next week.
This podcast is powered by Living Wholehearted, Courageous Girls, and the Christian Parenting Podcast Network. Thank you for joining us in this critical movement of shrinking our integrity gaps between what we preach and live.